All right, so a couple of things as we get started. Here's where you sign in. So if you haven't checked your name, check here. And make sure you're that. We've got, because some people have been just checking in as I see them each week. So hopefully I've got that right. So check in here. Over there are sheets from previous weeks. So if you've missed any week, you can grab whatever sheets you need there. If you're OCD like me, you can have every blank filled in. Water here. There are, oh, look at you guys already figured it out. There is candy on your table to share. If your table runs out or you don't see something you like, then you can at any time go and grab from somebody else's table, okay? But I did give everybody the same exact amount. I said I was OCD. I gave everybody the same exact amount of candy. So, what's the container for? The container, look at this table right here, already figured out. The containers for the wrappers, right? That's right. Oh, good. Yeah. All right. Work smarter, not harder. And this is how much I love you, okay? This is how much I love you. I even kept the York peppermint patties out of like the rest of them so that everything doesn't taste like mint. Wow. Right? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Okay, whatever. I think that's it. If anybody needs a book, there are books here. I think that's it. Any other questions before we get started? Okay, great. Let's take your blue sheets there, and we will sing those first two songs, both of those referenced in our reading. And we'll sing them, and then we will get into the chapter. So let's stand and sing. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions they fail not. As thou hast been, no forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses long join with the victory manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. This next verse is one of the best verses you will ever sing. that make my hands. Pray. Father God, we make our only boast in you. God, what a wonderful boast this is. Why should we gain from your reward? We cannot give an answer. We are sinners and we are needy people, and yet you and your great love sent Jesus to die for us. So, Father, we just rejoice in who you are tonight. We rejoice in the love that you have for us, a love that we 100% don't deserve. So, Father, we thank you that there is pardon for sin and peace that endureth. We thank you for your faithfulness, because it's your faithfulness in which we rest, not our own. So, guide us tonight as we talk about this book, as we talk about worshiping with our hearts, with our minds, and our homes. God, may we grow in our understanding of who you are and who you called us to be. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. See it. So there's another song that we'll get that later. Yes, help yourself, water. And does anybody need sheets? And were there enough sheets at every table? Oh, let me grab it. I've got it.
Oh, try.
Hey, I'll see the next one. Blue ones are the best. Yep. Yep. There you go. All right, anybody else? Anybody else? Oh, always one more. I didn't say it. He said it. I was once at a church, and they had somebody. They gave an altar call at the end, and the person that was leading just kept singing at the end. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody? There's the story. All right. So yes, feel free to come up anytime to get more water, or steal neighbor's candy. Okay. So our first chapter tonight, chapter 4, sing with heart and mind. Page 37, kind of the overall synopsis quote of this chapter: what you sing and don't sing changes you. I thought that was really helpful for us to think about as we go through the 5 highlights and maybe some other things as well. It's not just what you sing, but what you don't sing, right? If there's something that we don't sing enough about, it's going to be something that we don't think enough about, right? Or if it's something that we don't read in God's word enough, then it's going to be something we don't think enough about. And that kind of leads right into that first takeaway that I had on your paper there, under the heading, Singing Takes Sunday's Truths into Monday. That first quote is, if we don't sing about a particular truth, it's very likely we'll pray about it less and live with little thought of it. So your 2 blanks there, sing and pray. And I don't know about you, but I have found this true in my own life, right? If it's something that when I sing, maybe I'll say it in the positive way. If it's something I sing about, I think about it more and I pray about it more. They even said somewhere in there about how when they go to prayer meetings, they're amazed at how many times song lyrics and hymns are referenced in people's prayers, because that's those are things that we remember, right? And so we often quote that. I have been going to that Tuesday night men's Bible study, and they usually sing before they pray, and there's always 2 or 3 guys that pray something about what we just sang because it's fresh on their minds and in their hearts. You don't have a 4? Who put out these sheets? I'm not sure right here. This is a little bit heavier than the 5 seconds. There you go. There's the 4. Anybody else have this 4? All right. I've got extras over here. Oh, okay. All right. So there you go. So sing and pray are your first 2 lines. Just keep me on your toes. They talked about in there too, under this kind of area, the 2 voices that we kind of deal with throughout the week, wisdom and folly, right? And they said, you know, singing, singing keeps the right voice the loudest. And I think that that's so important. So one of the reasons why we think it's important here to match up what we sing with the sermon text isn't just to prepare you for the sermon that day, but it's so that hopefully those are things that you will be singing throughout the week. You'll almost be singing and reminding yourself of the sermon throughout the week as you go. During kind of the height of COVID, when we weren't meeting, one of the things that we did to try to help during that time was we did these little videos. And one of the videos was called Sunday Starts Now. We put it out Friday, and it was in hoping to help you prepare for Sunday. And then we went out Monday or Tuesday called Keep Sundays Going. And that was so that you could reflect on Sunday and keep that in your mind throughout the week. And singing is one way that we do that. We gather in this place for an important time of worship and instruction. But then we don't want to just walk out, right? We want to keep remembering that. And the songs help us to do that. They said along in this section, the next quote there on your page, friends, if our singing is not impacting how we process life, if it's not strengthening us, training us, encouraging us, and comforting us, just think about those again, strengthening us, training us, encouraging us, comforting us, then we have not unwrapped the gift that singing is to us, unwrapped. We've been playing with the wrappings. Most of us sing at times in our week or hum a tune that reminds us of its lyrics. Be singing what you sang on Sunday. Be singing the gospel. And as a parent, that image is very clear to me, right? You give a kid a present, especially a young little kid present. They don't really care what's in the box. They like the box more than the thing. And so we can be functioning that way if we just come in and we kind of sing the lyrics without really thinking of them or taking them with us as we go. We kind of just came in and played with that wrapper, played with the box, and missed out on the whole present that was in there, right? Does that make sense? I like that imagery. That's what I was going to so yeah, any comments about this topic of singing takes Sunday's truth into Monday?
Yes, 2 of Sunday's songs have been running through my head all week.
Good.
Not that doesn't always happen, but specifically, as I was reading this, it was like, okay, there's 2. It just kept running through. And it does, it encourages you to remember those tunes and just pull them back up and the words of those. Really help you get through the day.
Right. And in so doing, hopefully you remember me parts of the sermon.
Is there anything on our website that allows you to download the lyrics? Some of these songs
I don't think so. The bulletin that goes out, the digital bulletin, links to a YouTube link so you can get the whole song. So if some people don't know this, if you get the digital bulletin emailed to you every week on Fridays, with the connection and all of that, if you click, if you're in the order of service and you click on the title, it'll bring you to a video of that whole song. And just, you can hear it and prepare. And that's, part of the reason is if there's an unfamiliar song in there or whatever, that will get people knowing it a little bit better. But that's a good idea though, to do the lyrics out there too. I know some churches, and we should do this too, do like a whole Spotify playlist of kind of the top 100 songs that they sing or something like that. We actually do that for our kids, but we shouldn't do that over to the adults. We have all of our kids' music is on, we call it the Crosswalk Hymnal, and that has all of the lyrics, has videos to everything. Even has links to where you can buy the actual print music if you can play it or whatever.
If there's access to that for adults, that would.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
knew where that was.
Well, and when we got the lyrics on the planning service, you want to give planning
Right.
service access to everyone.
Right, yeah.
That's the question. But
Perfect.
I think you can't just, you can type in a Google search lyrics for a song.
Yeah, then they'll pop.
Several.
Yep. Good. All right, so then the second section here in this chapter, singing sustains you in every season of life. Singing sustains you in every season of life. And I love this section. They talked about several different things. They talked about kids' music, which we'll get into more into the next chapter. But then they talked a lot about the Psalms in this section. And the quote that I pulled from this section said, "The Psalms give us a vast vision of who God is." Read that right there, who God is. And then they pulled this quote from another book, Worship Night book by D.A. Carson. Says, "What ought to make worship delightful to us is not, in the first instance, its novelty or its aesthetic beauty or creativity," we can kind of put in there. All those things aren't bad, those are good things. But the primary thing, the thing that should delight us the most is the object, right? That's your blank there, the object. Object of worship, which is, who is God himself. God himself is delightfully wonderful, and we learn to delight in him. That, to me, is everything, right? It all boils down to this. What do I want in this life? Not only just in singing and everything. What do I want in this life is to know God better and to enjoy him even more, right? That's it. That's the Christian life in one sentence. Class over. No. That's the first thing that the Psalms do, and that's what our whole worship service should do. I think I said this last week too, but every single Sunday, if nothing else, if you can leave saying, I thought about God in this way, this attribute of God or whatever, if I either learned something new or thought more deeply about God's holiness, God's grace, the gospel, all of these things, then that was a successful Sunday, right? You can leave with that kind of, and that's even what we should be asking ourselves when we leave, not did I like this or that, but what was said about God? How can I respond to that this week? So Psalms, vast vision of who God is, that was one thing. And the other thing they said about the Psalms is that the Psalms show us how to deal with real life. So deal and life are your two blanks there. Psalms show us how to deal with real life. All of the emotions, all of the functions of life, there's lament there's celebration, there's even questioning and doubt there. The list goes on and on and on and on. And the Psalms show us how to deal with life. Even the imprecatory prayers in the Psalms, the prayers for someone else's bad, all of those are looped back into the glory of God, right? I'm not praying an imprecatory prayer for someone so that I feel better. I am praying that person fails in their sin so that the Lord is glorified, right? That's the whole point of the imprecatory prayers in the Psalms as well. But so the Psalms show us how to deal with real life, and we are going to sing a song a little bit later. So we'll come back to that. Singing reminds you of what God has done in your life. This is where they talked about that hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. They said, as you remember God's faithfulness, there's your blank, faithfulness, in your past, so often etched in your hearts through a song, you are inspired and equipped to face the ups and downs of the week. This is one of the reasons you need a good amount of good songs stored up to carry you through all of life. Stored up, right? I can look back on my own life and see even that song specifically, Great is Thy Faithfulness, and the Lord has used that in my own life, dealing with back when I was in Kentucky, the church that I was a part of split. And even that was a big focus for me, was God's faithfulness, even during that time. As you remember God's faithfulness in your past, so often etched in your hearts through song, you're inspired and equipped to face the ups and downs of the week. This is one reason why you need a good amount of good songs stored up to carry you through all of life. You think about God's faithfulness in your life, even when you failed. I think I just thought of the Israelites when I was reading this section, right? Like, so much of the Old Testament with the Israelites is them being saved by God, them celebrating that, and then a little bit later, them complaining because they didn't have food, or, then God gives them food, they celebrate that, and then they get tired of that food, so they complain again, and I can relate to that. But the whole point of that is, if we would remember God's faithfulness, how He has been faithful in the past, that will hopefully keep us from grumbling, complaining, being ungrateful, being unwilling to worship Him, doubting Him, all of these things in the future. So that's such an important thing. Even some of the questions at the end, had us think about songs from our past that we can still remember, and that points us back to how God was faithful in a different circumstance. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this chapter. Then the second, or the next part here, singing keeps your mind on eternity, which is so important, right? So important. Not only is a big part of coming in here every Sunday to remind us who God is, but to remind us that everything around us is temporal, right? Everything else is fading away. It's to remind us what is eternal, and for us to fix our hope in that and that alone. So the quote here says, our true joy is squeezed out if the content of our singing becomes too bookended by the short stretch of our life on earth. What that means is, if all of our songs focus on just the here and now, I feel this way today, what are you going to do about it, Lord? That's important and something worth talking about. But even more so than that is for us to have our eyes fixed on that which is eternal. Because, and this comes up so much for me in marriage counseling, counseling a couple, or counseling a person whose spouse is unbelieving or not treating them well. Just keep going back to, your eternity is secure. So whatever they do to you is going to pass away. Though it be difficult, though it be hard, if they are an unbeliever, then you have the higher ground with them, right? Nothing they can do can get at you, because your eternity is secure. So fix your joy in that, and let them see that you've got this abiding joy, this abiding peace in who the Lord is, and hopefully they will want that. Because if that spouse just argues or fights back, then we miss the opportunity for that spouse to see true joy. And that happens with coworkers, not just in a marriage relationship, but even with our kids, right? They mess up. We deal with it, but our joy is not fixed on their performance, right? Our joy is fixed in who the Lord is, and our eternity is with Him. So praise be His name. Then the last question, I forget, it was called something scallop or something. I forget, but I thought that was a little weird to write down on your sheet, so I just said growing, okay? Yeah, scallops and singing, yeah. Remember that? That was how we didn't like scallops, but then saw how they were cooked, and he learned more about what the scallops were and how they were cooked, and then he ended up starting to like them. But so here's the quote here, and this I just think is really good. So you need to grow. There's your first blank. Grow. You need to grow your appetite for good soul food. Not that, yeah, not that kind of soul food. For ribs, okay, fine, sure, ribs. We'll add this, that's fine. You grow your appetite for good soul food. You grow it through two things. First blank, focus, and the second one by follow. And I always thought this was so good and succinct and to the point. How do we grow our appetite for congregational singing, for good congregational singing? By focus and follow. And then they unpack that a little bit. They said, ask God to help you focus. So even before gathering together with the church, or if you're doing this at home, or if it's just your own quiet time, ask God to help you focus. And am I alone in this? But can be a very unfocused person when it comes to prayer or even God's word. Have you ever had it? Maybe I'm alone, where I'll read 10 verses of God's word and think, what did I just read? Okay.
You're not alone.
Yeah, right? Okay, good. I'm not alone. So even with that exact example of reading 10 verses and then forgetting it, focus and follow-up are key to that, right? Focus, meaning ask God to help me focus before I even open my Bible. And then if I get to that point, 10 verses in, and say, wait, what have I read? And do I have the follow-up? Do I have the discipline to say, okay, if I don't remember what I just read, go back and read it rather than just going on to check my box that I read this for today. So first thing, ask God to help you focus even before you get in it. Then think about the words you're singing and the images they are painting. I don't have this, people are surprised when I say this because I'm a musician, but I really don't have a very, I don't even poetic mind. I don't have, images, imagery, and beauty, and I just don't just give me the facts. I'll sing about those. So there's some songs that we sing where it takes me a little while to, even Magnificent, Marvelous, Matchless Love, there's a lot of imagery in that, and I love it. Each day the dawn awakens is an encore of your Magnificent, Marvelous. I love that line, and there's imagery in there, and the lines preceding that too. So ask God to help you focus on it, and then think about those words. Be disciplined to, even if it's a quick line, to go back and think about what you just sang. And then respond in prayer to lines that particularly strike you. If that line, as we're singing it, strikes you, then just take a moment and pray and thank God for that understanding, for that. You don't have to keep singing. Jump back in when you're done praying, of course, but respond in prayer to lines that particularly strike you. And then, as we've talked about from Colossians 3:16, be mindful of those around you, enjoying being part of something greater than just yourself. Again, just the gift that we get to do this together. We don't have to stay at home and do it by ourselves. We get to be a part of something greater, the corporate body lending its voice together. Another thing they say for focus and follow, make a note of any words or phrases you don't understand. There's your blank there, understand. And I'll tell you what, as a worship pastor, nothing thrills my heart than to have somebody come up to me after service and say, what did that word mean? Or what did that line mean that we sang? Oh, that's the best thing ever. So I've had people ask me about blessed assurance when we sing that, the angels descending, that's a Genesis 12 reference. And had people ask me about a song we're going to sing this coming Sunday, Thine Eye Diffused a Quickening Ray from Anne Kennedy, right? So I love us lots of questions about, oh, what's that song? Jesus, I my cross have taken. There's a lot of dense language in there that people are like, oh, what does this mean? So that's, I love it. It's great. Obviously, we don't want to do we want to have enough of those to where people are still thinking and figuring out things, but we don't want to just fill our time with words we don't understand either. So balance there. So and this is a good thing. When we did our kids services, when the kids were all in service at the end of August and beginning of September, we did little kids bulletins, and this was one of the things on the kids bulletins. Write down any words to ask mom and dad or somebody about afterwards, and that's a good thing, not just for kids, but for adults, because I'll tell you what, Spencer, probably every other sermon, there's a word I'm like, I don't know what that word means, so I've got to go ask him. Wayne, threw out a word I didn't know. Okay, here, he's not here, but how many of you know what the word peccadillo means? Peccadillo? I didn't know what that meant. I had to ask. A peccadillo is like a minor quirk, a little annoyance or something, just a little minor thing, a peccadillo. It's a real word, I thought I was making it up, but anyway. That's an aside. And then they end this quote, if you find your attention has after all flickered, like mine just did with the word peccadillo, don't give up, but refocus, right? Refocus. So don't get discouraged or stressed out if in the middle of singing a song you're thinking about lunch or whatever. Just refocus and get back to it, okay? That's why I feed you here, so that you don't have to worry about the food element. You can just focus, okay? Any questions or comments about this chapter before we get into the discussion question? Yep. All right, so the question I put on here for discussion, what song, peccadillo. I think, now don't quote me on this, you just are setting me up to fail on two. I think it's Peccadillo. Maybe. Oh, I got the correct then. So. You didn't know it either, Charlotte? Oh, well then I don't feel as bad. Okay. You're really smart, so I don't feel bad if I didn't know it. That's a Peccadillo. No. I know that one. All right, so here's the question. What song have you sung recently that gave you a broad, deep picture of the character and nature of God? And what was that attitude? So, in layman's terms, that's a little confusing. What song have you sung recently that you were like, oh man, I've never thought about God in that way before? Or maybe, wow, that was so good to sing of God in that way. I haven't sung or thought about God in that way before. Any examples? Mm-hmm. Just tonight even, yeah, yep.
Well, the other one too, just saying how deep the Father's love, I mean, that's, you're really thinking about this, you're singing, that's all.
Yeah, we haven't sung that one in a while too. Yep. Greatness.
Hey, we sing Jesus is mine, but I learned faith, joy.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the actual hymn.
Uh-huh.
And when the new song came out, it really made it a lot more special.
Yep.
That hymn wasn't still left in my hymn book anymore. Now it has different meanings, but not all the verses are recorded. It's just different, but.
She's talking about the song that we sing, Jesus is Mine. That was actually an old hymn that Jordan Coughlin redid and reworked it, changed some of the lyrics, but that first line, fade, each earthly joy, Jesus is mine, that's actually from an old hymn.
So it's darkest the wilderness,
Yep.
it has no resting place, Jesus alone can bless. That's how I recognized it when we first sang, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know this thing.
Yeah.
So I went back home and, yeah, the hip is completely different, but the words.
Yeah.
Are amazing.
Yep.
It's just wonderful to be reminded of something old that.
Yep.
Maybe great.
Yeah. All right, yes.
Over God of highest heaven, and particular thing that
Yep.
certain kind of
Yeah.
and the praise.
Yep.
How myself was saying.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that one gets me a lot too, that, and even the imagery of, I was, blinded by my sin, and, then your spirit gave me life, opened up your word to me. I just love it through the gospel. There's something in it. I just love that every time. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The Holder God. Actually, it's been a while since we had sung that. And from Isaiah 40. Yeah. I love God. That's another one I have a question about.